Hello, Internet. Gino, that Camino Rieko here again with another episode of Deep Listens. I had a little bit of trouble with my audio setup, so I might be a little bit echoey, at least at the beginning of the show. It should get better midway through, and if Billy's done his editing magic properly, it should be tolerable throughout, but I just wanted to give you a heads up as to why that is. I apologize. It should not be happening in the future. And today we're going to be talking about The Messenger. It's a game about ninjas and time travel. And to join me today, I've got Billy, the Scroll Rothert.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Really happy to be talking about The Messenger today. Ninjas and time travel, probably my two most iconic topics to talk about. I'm really happy I picked this game. It's very on brand for me.
And we are also joined, as always, by Peter, the Messenger Busby.
I'll take that. Yeah, that's solid. So I'm super pumped for the fun fact this week. I got it from a podcast. Great podcast, which I like to steal from to make ours better whenever possible.
I just want to be clear. In the future, just steal from the podcast. Give them no credit.
Okay. I will give credit this time, but in the future, we love to steal on this one. So it's from Stuff You Should Know. A good podcast, but not a gaming podcast, so listen to both. But they talked about Korean fan death. So it's this superstition / belief in Korea that if you sleep with an electric fan running, it'll kill you. So like they believe it enough that the South Korean government, through their Korea Consumer Protection Board in 2006, put out a warning that asphyxiation from electric fans and air conditioners was among South Korea's 5 most common summer accidents. Right? So the theory is you can either die from hypothermia, which, okay, maybe, probably not, or from respiratory problems because, like, the fan spinning screws up the oxygen going to your face, whatever. I checked with a Korean individual who I know, and they said, like, yeah, like, people definitely believe it. It's decreasing over time. But, like, fan death is a serious thing in Korea.
Huh.
I know.
So when you told me Korean fan death, I assumed, one, someone was going around murdering sports fans in Korea. Or...
StarCraft
K-pop fans. Yeah, K-pop fans just getting murdered. Or that somehow people were just, like, standing up with low-ceiling fans and just, like...
See, that's what I thought when I saw the title of this thing. But no, like it's like it chops up the oxygen and you asphyxiate.
Your oxygen gets chopped and screwed until you're dead?
And, like, now, like, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I'm trying to think of, like, what the U.S. version of this would be. But, like, obviously your own beliefs don't seem ridiculous to you. So, like, you can't pick out what, like, the U.S. version of Korean fan death is.
I mean, there's always, like, cameras stealing your soul, like that sort of thing.
Right, but, like, that's not, like, current anymore. Like, nobody's still...
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, we seem to believe that eating McDonald's is okay for you.
Yeah, you know, obviously we have the weirdest gun laws of any civilized nation.
But yeah, that's pretty weird.
Setting those aside, man, death is a little bit more fun and whimsical than our weird gun laws.
That's true. Well, setting aside our weird gun laws for now, and the fact that was a fact about the human animal, the most dangerous of all animals.
True.
We have an email.
Ooh.
Email. And if you want to send an email for feedback for the show, you can do so at deeplistenspod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And our email comes in from Chris Zombiepod Redacted, who has written another diatribe.
Long-time listener, first-time emailer?
Yeah, long-time listener, definitely first-time emailer. So let me just pull up his email. His email says, Dear Deep Listens, Catpanions, as always. I don't know why he calls us Catpanions, but whatever.
I like cats.
He does. Glad to see Gino made you all play a JRPG widely regarded as one of the best in the genre, while I am stuck playing Final Fantasy games. Life is a cruel trick that knows no bounds. Regardless, I thought I would share a story from Giant Bomb's past. As you may or may not be aware of, Giant Bomb has an endurance run of Ryan Davis and Patrick Klepek playing the game Chrono Trigger for the first time. I often refer to this video series as the Forgotten Endurance Run, but that's a story for another time. One of the most well-known moments in their playthrough came when they tried to save Luca's mother. As neither had played the game before, they were not able to figure out how to input the password to stop her legs from being crushed. When it became clear that they would accept this event as done and done, there was a huge public outcry for them to try again and save her mom. For some reason, while Chrono Trigger empowers people to craft their own stories within a storybook template, everyone feels like there is one true story. Likewise, these people feel obligated to remind everyone who plays Chrono Trigger that they must play the game this one way. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. JRPG fans kind of suck. Now let's get to my question of the week. Instead of my normal song and dance, I decided to ask a simple question. What the fuck is Chrono Cross? It's like a sequel to Chrono Trigger, but maintains few of its mechanical scaffolds, and is set in a largely novel world. Also, none of the characters are the same, and the Chrono Cross's story is totally different from Chrono Trigger's tone. And there's this weird text-based visual novel that they made for the SNES that only released in Japan. Gino, without spoiling Chrono Cross, what is this franchise? And where do any of these stand in the spectrum regarding Chrono Cross? Is it a timeless masterpiece, or is it a disappointing follow-up to one of the greatest games of all time? I wouldn't know, but dozens of people have told me that it's the only JRPG that punches near Final Fantasy VIII's heights, and at one point Gino wanted me to play the game after I finished Final Fantasy VIII. Okay, so without spoiling Chrono Cross, that game is insane. It was one of the only games to get a 10 out of 10 from GameSpot back in the day, back when they had their weird, like, gaming algorithm that they used to generate review scores. Like, you couldn't just give a game a 10. It had to have, like, a 10 in visuals and a 10 in graphics. Like, they broke up all the parts of a game as though a game is just the sum of its parts. And so it was very hard to get 10s back in the day. But Chrono Cross is one of the games that actually managed it, which, let's say that's a contested score. But Chrono Cross is a ridiculous game. It's completely different than Trigger. The game bears almost no resemblance to Chrono Trigger. I don't want to spoil anything, but, like, the game has a ludicrously large cast. It delves into, like, completely different conceits than Chrono Trigger. Like, Chrono Trigger... Chrono is in the name because it's about time travel. Chrono Cross, I can't even say. It's completely different. It's another gigantic conceit, but it's completely different. That game's fucking wild. We're gonna have to play it. ZP, if you're listening to this, we're gonna have to play that. Maybe we'll do that for a community endurance run down the line or something. That game's bananas. All right, so that's our email. If you want to get in touch with the show. Oh, and I guess the quality. Chrono Cross is a good game. It is a very good game. It has one of the best soundtracks on the PlayStation. And the graphics were very good for the time. They are still quite good. And the gameplay system is still quite interesting. But that story is just like bananas on a level that I can't even articulate. You need to play it. We need to play it. All right. So if you want to get in touch with the show, do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Without further ado, let's discuss the Messenger. Billy, what's the Messenger?
So, this game is, at its core, it starts, well, alright, kind of takes a shift. So we're going to talk about just like the first few hours of the game and the story for now. So, the game starts off with a brief introduction about this world that has been attacked by a demon army and has pushed all of humans' surviving civilization to the furthest westmost point of the land, where they live in hiding and exile, just sort of waiting for either this demon possession to pass or subside, or for some savior to come rescue them. And you, the protagonist, are just some nameless ninja participant here, and one day a messenger comes, or some figure from the west comes and brings you a scroll and says, "Take this scroll to the top of the mountain and fulfill your destiny." And so you do.
Yep.
And that kicks off the start of the messenger. The game plays much like a classic Ninja Gaiden style game. Lots of action, platforming, hack and slash kind of stuff, and you progress through a series of levels to get to the top of the mountain, and then fulfill your destiny.
Yep. And you're basically doing this in an action platformer style. You can jump. You've got a slash attack. I think it's one of the first free abilities you get to slash and then jump after you slash something in the air. So in order to double jump, you have to jump, attack something, and then jump again. Once you get that ability,
there's a specific name for that. I believe it's called cloud stepping.
Yes.
Not necessarily. I think it's referred to that in other games too.
Dub stepping. Yeah, so when you jump and you attack, you dubstep, and then that allows you to jump again, and that can allow you to stay in the air kind of indefinitely by just jumping and attacking enemy projectiles or enemies, or there are lanterns and objects kind of strewn throughout the levels that you can jump and attack, and that just kind of allows you to have a double jump without having a double jump.
Right. Other games have used something similar to this. One that comes to mind is Dust Force. Has done this kind of every time you score like a valid hit in the air, you get another jump. So there's been a lot of games that have used this kind of movement mechanic as opposed to your typical platforming double jump.
Yep. Yeah, and you eventually unlock further upgrades like the ability to throw a ninja star or a shuriken.
Nice. Very authentic.
I've got to add some culture as the person who speaks Japanese.
There's lots of upgrades. They follow a very typical tech tree, sort of a skill tree model, and you fill this. You purchase upgrades by collecting these little shards that are called time shards. And you get enough of them, you can trade them into a merchant that you meet along the way, and that is a recurring character that helps you along all your levels. You can purchase upgrades for yourself, like more health, more key points to throw more shurikens with, more resistance to certain damage types, even stuff like getting better abilities like underwater dashes and aerial glide attacks and stuff like that. So you get cool attack and passive upgrades.
Yep, and some of them are pretty key, I think, to progressing in the game. Like the aerial attack, the glide attack is really useful. You get that glide that's kind of a squirrel suit. They give you a squirrel suit that makes you descend slowly, and it lets you kind of fly on air gusts and things like that. You eventually get a grappling hook as well. They call it something else.
Dart. It's the rope dart. And the merchant specifically says, everyone's going to just fucking call it the grappling hook anyway, so we'll just call it the rope dart once, and we'll just be done with it.
Yes, because the grappling hook's clearly what it is.
Right. The game is very meta throughout, too.
Yes. And the early parts of the game, you're basically just side-scrolling, doing some platforming. It's a pretty straightforward action, like NES-style action game, as you mentioned, very Ninja Gaiden inspired. And I think at some point they say that this attack or something was invented by Joe Gaiden.
Yeah, I don't know, something awful.
Yeah, a really great joke. We all had a great time.
This all comes from these sort of witty little one-liners and meta commentary come from two characters primarily. One of them's great, one of them's awful.
Yep.
And so
the great one is the shopkeeper.
Yeah, shopkeeper's great.
How many of his stories did you guys read
Every one I possibly could.
Oh my god, I got through a couple, and then I was just like, enough. I'm not doing this anymore.
I read through a couple. Some of them weren't bad. Some of the stories I thought were good.
The best one was about the guy whose parents go on a trip. I shouldn't say a trip. It's like they're explorers, and they get frozen in an iceberg. Yeah, and then he finds them. That was a good one. I liked that one.
What was the story? If you just keep clicking on the cabinet.
Yeah, that was awful.
It was about setting goals and curiosity and satisfaction and stuff like that. It got really existential.
It was a weird sort of self-help interlude where I think the developer, or whoever wrote the dialogue, I should say, had an epiphany at some point. They were like, people should hear about this. And it was like vaguely interesting in a sort of haphazardly thought out way, but it took so effing long.
Well, he specifically said, like, if you try to open the cabinet one more time, I'm going to keep you stuck here, and you have to listen to a big, boring dialogue.
I was fairly warned, but for the sake of the podcast, I persevered to see if it had story implications. It did not.
There's one time... I
think he does say, like, you can't, like... I think he says, like, the goals that you're trying to achieve, when you set out to achieve them, by the time you reach your goal, you will no longer be the person who set that goal. And so thinking that goal will bring you happiness is not... It just cannot be true, because the person who is at the end of the road is not the person who started the journey. And so you have to realize that happiness, whatever success is, how it's defined currently, is incorrect. And you need to find your own way to happiness, basically.
Yeah, his point was goal setting defers happiness to the future.
Yes.
Which, like, yeah, because sometimes you need to do work now. I don't know. I wasn't crazy about it, but he did warn me. It was my fault.
There was a time in the game, a brief time, where the shopkeeper is not there.
Yeah.
It was just for like one level. And if you try to open the cabinet then, it's like a whole different like set of dialogue that's specifically about the player who just looks for stuff for the sake of looking for stuff, and how developers should like reward the curious player for trying to see every like dialogue point. And it even says like, all right, this is the time I'm going to start repeating dialogue now, and that should signal you that I'm done. And so it repeats like 6 lines, and then it's like, damn it, I really thought that would get you, but I'm not repeating anymore. Like, that part really got to me, because I felt like I was having a conversation with the person who wrote that.
And and I feel like this game is very much just vibing on other games that have come before it that have set those expectations. Like, there are a bunch of points in the level where there are breakable blocks that are clearly off main path, and if you go and break them, there are like power cells kind of off to the side. They're kind of your challenge items that you get. It'll put you through a platforming puzzle that's usually more difficult than the regular level design, and the game tells you if you get like 45 of them, then you'll get an overpowered upgrade that will make it all worth it. Hey Billy, how long did it take you to do that? I'm not going to ask if anyone did it.
So because I was sick for most of this week, I didn't get all of them.
What?
But
get off the show.
I was sick. I'm still
Yeah, I'm sick now, having heard this, Billy.
So you get a different shuriken, and the different shuriken, I think what it does is it keeps going until your body collides with it again. So if you just toss it out, it'll just like keep on like going around until you catch it.
So like, it bounces off of everything?
It goes back to you, and as long as you don't physically collide with it again, it'll keep like zigzagging back and forth. And so, like, I guess in theory, if you got it and you like it was coming back to you and you jumped, it would miss you, and then you could like jump again. You know, you could like time it to go like forwards and backwards a couple times, and it can really clear out rooms. And I think it doesn't have any limit to number of enemies it can hit. So I don't know. It's definitely an upgrade, but I don't know if it's like broken, overpowered.
Nah, it doesn't really sound that great.
I mean, it sounds useful.
Yeah, it's not useless, but the messenger or the shopkeep overhyped it.
Yeah, and he literally says, "Oh yeah, if you do this, maybe you'll get like a super overpowered upgrade."
Yeah.
Yeah, this game is very much fluent in video game speak, and that's kind of the main focus.
Can we talk about the graphic shift? Should we wait? Because I don't think anything has like struck my eye so much, and then immediately I disregarded it like 2 seconds after it happened. I was like,
Yeah,
oh
so
man, that's really clever, and then I immediately stopped caring.
so the beginning of this game is 8-bit style. It's like a regular Nintendo, a little bit better than what a regular Nintendo could have done, I believe. But then this is not even necessarily an original thing for the Messenger. Other games have done this sort of, you're going to move up through the different console generations as you play sort of thing. But the Messenger does this as well. You eventually fight your way to the top of the mountain that they tell you to get to by platforming and doing regular action game stuff. And then, Pete, what happens when you get to the top of the mountain?
So you get to the top of the mountain, and you're launched into the future, and it switches to 16-bit, because in the future, all the graphics are better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
you have a hat.
Yeah, you do get a super cool new hat, which the shopkeeper also likes. That was a funny joke. I liked that one. But yeah, there's a graphic shift, and like it's an excellent joke, sort of like little like oh haha, like we're all gamers here, we get what's going on. And then it's just like, oh, it's nice that things are prettier now. Like it's
Yep.
like whoever thought this up was very clever, and it enhanced my gaming experience significantly for exactly 2 seconds.
Yeah, that was actually something that I was thinking of, that once you have this different art style, this second art style, that means that every single asset that you make has to have two versions.
Yeah.
One in the 16-bit style, one in the 8-bit style, which means you've doubled your art load at negligible gameplay ramifications.
Yeah, like for the amount of effort that required, there's very little rate of return.
Because the mechanics don't actually change once you go to the 16-bit mode. You've got a hat. And I mean, the hat changed things for me emotionally, but it didn't necessarily change how the game played in any meaningful way. And so I don't think it was necessarily bad, like that moment when you jump. And they also make use of it because once you go to the future, the game stops being a regular action game, and it starts becoming a Metroidvania game, because it turns out you're not the first messenger. You can stop gasping now, guys. You can stop gasping.
What?
You're not the first messenger. It turns out there's a time loop, and messengers have been coming and passing the same scroll forward through the millennias, getting sent forward and forward and further forward in time, and you are just one in a loop. But then you become the shopkeeper, and you do a bad job of keeping the next messenger alive.
It's really not your fault. They don't explain the rules to you.
No. And they don't let you do it. It's just a cutscene, so it's not like you can even screw it up.
Right. It's entirely scripted. You're like destined to fail.
Yep. You don't send Quarble where he should. And you mentioned really there are two characters.
We didn't talk about
We should
Quarble.
mention Quarble.
We talked about the really, really cool character that actually does meaningful stuff to your experience.
Yeah, let's talk about the asshole.
Yeah.
Talk about Corval, that dick.
We talked about that one cool character, and then we said that other character who's awful, yeah, it's Quarble. So the first time you die in this game, well, I shouldn't say it's the first time. Like, when you go to the shopkeeper is like, hey, take this thing with you. It's a fucking Quarble. Okay, and so when you die, rather than actually dying, Quarble is a little demon that shows up and says, hey, look, I'm just gonna, like, quickly just bump you back in time real fast to when you didn't die, and you retry at the last checkpoint. Well, every time you die, two things happen. One, Quarble antagonizes you in the reload screen, and two...
It's super cool every time it happens.
Yep.
Quarble...
It's even cooler when it starts to repeat.
Yeah. And two, Quarble takes, like, a tax from you. So you normally go throughout the game defeating enemies, popping the little lanterns and, various breakables in the world, and you get these little tokens, these time shards that are used for upgrades. Well, when you die, rather than you collecting these things, Quarble will fly around you and eat them as you would collect them otherwise. And until Quarble has been fed enough, or enough time has passed, but normally it's enough time that's passed that it's like you can't just sit there and wait it out. It'd be too annoying. You don't get to collect any money until Quarble has had his fill.
Yeah, when Quarble's hungry, you let him eat.
And like Quarble's a piece of shit. I think we can all agree that. But I would stand up for the tax. I think it's an element that adds, beyond the fact that like, all right, you have to go back to your previous save point. It does create a little bit more consequence for dying. Like, all right, I'm gonna have to pay Quarble a little bit. It's not bad, but it does just remind you that like, all right, you've died. That was bad. Quarble's annoying as shit. So pay his tax and he'll leave.
It also prevents traditional grinding.
Yes, that's the big thing. The grinding prevention, because if Quarble didn't steal your gems, then you could die at some of the more lucrative grind spots and really amass upgrades early.
Oh, man, I didn't even think of that. I gotta get my grind game up.
I mean, I noticed it because some of the like best grinding spots had a checkpoint right before them because they are very dangerous. Like, you need to hit 5 lanterns that are hovering over spikes, and you have no safe way to leave unless you do a lot of dub steps. But I think the Quarble tax makes sense. It's just everything about Quarble that sucks.
Yeah.
Like if the game did not antagonize you and say like, oh, you've died X number of times, idiot.
Yeah, it counts.
Oh, I've eaten this many of your gems, fuckwad.
I would actually like him more if he were like that overly hostile. If Quarble was like, you piece of shit.
No, actually, he's more just like, does your controller work?
Hey, if someone's like watching, you could say that you had input lag.
Nice one, Corbs.
Get him, Quarble. Fuck him up.
Hey, have you considered not dying?
Like, good tip.
You got
Thanks,
him.
Quarble.
You know what? I would like overtly antagonistic Quarble instead of passive aggressive Quarble.
He's like super aggressive.
Stop sucking spines, asshole. Yeah, Quarble he adds almost nothing to the game.
No.
His existence is meaningless to me. Does he eventually? So I got to the point where the game becomes a Metroidvania, and I just didn't enjoy playing this game very much. I found that while the controls were tight and some of the mechanics, like the way the grappling hook functions, is suitably different from other games of its genre, that was kind of interesting. But I just found a lot of just kind of weird bullshitty deaths happening pretty frequently, and I just was not like, I had fought a boss that was a dragon who would knock the platforms out from under you.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch
Manfred.
of Manfred fighting him. I got a bunch of finicky deaths where I just like touched him once. I was 90% of the way through the fight and just like fell into a pit because he bumped into me. So that happened a few too many times. But did Quarble have any sort of story payoff, or is he just an asshole for the?
I think he's just awful the whole way through.
He's a piece of shit the whole time.
They don't even give him like.
You meet another. You might have seen this, Gino. I forget what point this happens, but you meet another Messenger's Quarble. That's another stupid Q name, but that's like the only time anything happens.
Quibble.
There we go.
Does Quibble like become a story significant person?
Like nothing ever happens with any of these things.
Great. So the story of this game.
Do you think, like before, like just last Quarble related question, do you think there's a subset of gamers who enjoyed Quarble? Like, who is this for?
Billy, you like Dark Souls.
I didn't like. All right, look. There's some times where I don't like being antagonized in a game, right? There's a very specific line. I'll give great examples. Dark Souls is a time where when you die it says you died. And you know that you signed up for this being difficult, and the antagonism, if that's the right word, is part of the challenge. The game is trying to make you quit, and your perseverance is part of the gameplay. And that's even part of like Dark Souls lore. Like when you, the player, quit the game, you have gone hollow. Your NPC there has gone hollow now. However, in Street Fighter V, for example, a game that I've also played a lot in the last 6 months, when you're playing against someone online and you win a fight or you lose a fight, it doesn't say like character name wins. It says either you win or you lose. And in Street Fighter, I'm pissed off when the thing says you lose, because I don't want to be told that I'm a loser for like getting like legitimately bested by an opponent who outplayed me. That is insult to injury, right? I don't need that. But when a game's overall experience is, we're going to make this game punishingly difficult, it's you and your like mental metal versus this game and its experience, then I don't mind the antagonistic nature of some of these like game elements. I don't like it when Street Fighter V says you lose, but like that person just outplayed me and I should get better or learn that matchup more. I don't need to be told that I suck because I'd have to learn the Nash versus, Dhalsim matchup better.
So, you see, now the I lose, I don't mind as much because it's a statement of fact, like it's telling you a status. But Quarble's existence, like they could just have you die and reset without him existing at all, just like every other game that has a checkpoint mechanic. Most of them don't have an asshole explanation for why you're not dead. Most of them don't go to the trouble of creating a character just to make fun of you. And that's his only purpose. The only reason he exists is to mock the player. And that's just a design decision. It actually was more difficult for them to do that than to just have a regular checkpoint system. Right?
Yeah, they had to go out of their way to do it.
They had to go out of their way to make an asshole character who's going to just make fun of you for no reason. And it's a decision that I like. Quirble wasn't what frustrated me. It was playing the game that frustrated me. But Quirble didn't help.
I wasn't frustrated by the gameplay in the same way that you were, but that might be obvious. But there were times where I would play the game and I'd die a lot, and I wouldn't understand why I was dying. And then I'd stop and I'd take a minute and I'd say, oh, maybe there's like a mechanic that I'm not thinking of correctly. Oh, maybe I need to be grappling here instead of trying to hover here, And I would make a gameplay change and I'd solve the puzzle of how it's supposed to be played. So that is something that I actively enjoyed and got benefit from. But there are frustrating times in this game where you can die a lot and not quite know why.
Yeah, and that was more like it was the times when I knew what the execution was supposed to be, and my just stupid fingers wouldn't mash the buttons the correct way, or like I would bump into something and it would knock me into a pit instead of just being able to, land on the ledge. It was all like minor annoyances. And I did find some stuff that felt legitimately kind of broken, like doing the gliding attack feels kind of broken in a bunch of fights. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys found that if you just glide and use the glide attack, it causes you to almost fly as long as you can keep hitting the A button and hit it and slashing something. So against some bosses, you can just kind of hover over their head, just constantly attacking them.
Yes, you can do that for many bosses. I exploited that quite a bit.
Yeah, that seems like the way to cheese most bosses. They have a weak point right above their head.
Yeah, most bosses do have some kind of soft spot or weak point or vulnerability, and it typically is some kind of like central location, and frequently the area around that spot is just like empty pathing. There's
And
like
safe.
nothing there that's stopping you. I mean, there's sometimes where like, you know, the boss will like shut its eye or something and you can't poke at it anymore. Like there's times where they'll clear you out of there. You have to reset and reapproach. But for the most part, some bosses can just get just owned by that hover attack. Great example was that that lady who had Quibble.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a move you could bait her into doing where she'd do this like horizontal spray attack. But you just
Yep.
fly over her head and just bop her over and over again until she's done. You get like 8 hits for free.
And there's also when you're at the top of the tower and you're fighting the 3 monks, the like giant super monk.
Mm-hmm.
You can just instead of doing the like jump onto the hands thing, once you get on the hands the first time, you can actually just hover over its head and just fly over it and just constantly attack it for
for a
while.
They will eventually throw you off. That's what I'm saying. You have to reset a couple times. They'll usually throw you off in some way. But
Yeah,
you
but
can
it's
just be
not.
doing that and make the rest of the fight trivial. You don't have to like dodge their beams or dodge their
Yes.
attacks. It's just you're just kind of floating over there.
Yeah, there's a bunch
until-
of like platformy puzzles that they want you to do, but you can just avoid that and instead fly over its head and just attack
Yes,
it until it
yes.
resets.
There's more than one occasion where you can do that. Notably, the Kalos and Seuss's
Yep,
fight,
same
you can
thing.
do that quite a bit. Even on the one that's invulnerable from the front, you can still bop him on the head.
That's what I did. I just hovered over his head.
Yeah, until he was like done with his bit.
Yep. Yeah, so that is the one kind of weird broken mechanical thing. So if you're playing this game, the flight mode, entering flight mode is pretty much the way to get through many of the bosses.
It also made just like general level travel a bit easier. And here's what I wish they would do. I wish they wouldn't let that give you your double jump back, your cloud step, because what you
your
could
dubstep?
do, yeah, what you could do is you could approach an area that would have required you to use your cloud step, and instead you can do your hover, attack it, and you could just sit there and save your next double jump. You could just sit there until the timing was perfect for you, or until you were ready or felt confident to take that double jump. It made all of those sequences that would have been like tight and fast, and you have to do it all at once with no stopping. You could just kind of just hang out and wait until you wanted to continue.
Yeah. There were a bunch
that
of
made it
times
kinda
when
bad.
instead of doing precise kind of flow, sort of jumping and platforming where you're just in a rhythm, I would often just kind of enter into flight mode and just jam on the A button and hope that something entered my hitbox and gave me a double jump. And that totally worked.
One thing again, talking about some of these tight mechanics, overall the controls of this game are very tight. You know, they're very crisp, very very clean, and even though we're talking about kind of abusing this one mechanic, it's really well designed, except for this exploit.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't like, but I don't think I should fault the game for this, is in lots of other games, when you have some kind of aerial hit, there's just like a frame or two of like hit lag where you're like in the air and your downward momentum slows or stops.
Mm-hmm.
This happens in Dust Force when you hit something. There's like a brief, just like a frame or two where you're like kind of like slowed down or you pause in the air, and it allows just that moment enough for you to move your thumb from one button to the next button to jump again.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in Game of the Year Vault of Story Abyssal City.
Oh yeah, Game of the Year of all story Abyssal City, sure.
Yeah. It happens there too. In this game, it doesn't. If you're falling and you would strike an object, it does nothing to change your downward momentum, and I was kind of missing that a little bit. But it made the controls have to be even more tight, and I didn't mind that. It's just I got punished by that on more than one occasion, and I was like, oh man, I'm used to there being like a small little beat there once I hit something, of just enough time where I can like move my finger to the next button. But instead, I've found myself having to keep the tip of my thumb over the like the slash button and the meaty middle part of my thumb over the jump, and I had to just like roll my thumb over both buttons to do what I wanted to do. That part I didn't like so much, but the rest of the movement was super tight here. Very, very clean platforming in this game.
Yeah, and I will say that I felt that exact same thing. There were some times where you were tasked with doing a lot of cloud steps, one after another, and you would just end up falling through because of that lack of a second of pause. Like, it made some sections where you were definitely supposed to be doing cloud steps all the time, or like you fell into a cloud step. Um, there are sometimes where the cloud step would be at the bottom of like a big drop, and your momentum wouldn't stop when you made the hit. So by the time you hit the jump button, you had hit the ground, or you had hit, some spikes or lava or something. It doesn't come up all the time, but it came up enough for it to be notable and annoying. So Billy, what did you think about the game? So once you achieve hat status and enter 16-bit mode, you defeat a couple of bosses, and then you realize that you're the new Western hero. Your messenger gets killed, and then you have to find some music notes, except these music notes are in the levels you have already beaten, and you have to kind of go back. And I thought like that twist was, I could detect it coming when I was playing those levels, because there were a bunch of areas that seemed accessible, but I was missing equipment that I would need to access them. So I kind of expected there to be backtracking at some point. But this game kind of becomes a Metroidvania game.
Yeah, so I think in order to properly introduce this, we're going to have to get into a little bit more of the messenger story.
Sure.
So to kind of like, succinctly, bring the messenger's story to a close, you learn a lot later in the game how this all really began. And when you first play through it, you don't have that understanding until the very end. But what you get as you first play through is that first you are just this ninja taking the scroll to the mountaintop. You do that. They send you 500 years into the future, and you don't have access to all these time portals and stuff at the very beginning. You're just the next messenger that's going to bring the scroll back to the next guy, and then you become a blue robe person, and you realize, oh, hey, this is a big cycle. But what your story is, the protagonist's story, is to break the cycle, not just be another random link in the chain.
Yeah, it's a Final Fantasy VIII situation.
Yeah. Because, stories like that go so well.
Yeah, it's a real Chrono Trigger sort of thing.
And, oh god. So, first you're mundane ninja, then you're future ninja that basically gives your the next person in the chain the scroll, then you're the shopkeeper, and you do a bad job, so your messenger dies, and then you say, let's actually break this cycle, and so you go back into the shit, and you have to find these musical notes, but why? And it's because the first time these demons ever invaded the realm of humans, there was a great flood, and much of the land was just like flooded, and so only one one small nation was left, and the humans were all pushed to the most western tip of this landmass. This was like the first generation, the first cycle, and these two characters rose up as natural leaders, a man and a woman, that were named the Muse and the Phantom. The Muse was like a tinkerer and like an inventor, creative, musical. She was inspirational, and the Phantom was like stoic and had lots of power and courage and perseverance and strength. So they ruled together, and when the demons came, they defended the people so that they could escape. Muse was killed, unfortunately. Her most recent invention taken by her lover, this music box, and he retreats with his saved people, and they go to the western part of the world where they're all exiled. Now, once he sets up his people in exile, he goes back in a rage and tries to 1v1 the Demon King. And in doing so, he obviously gets smacked, because it's a Demon King versus a mortal with no other interesting qualities.
Does he have a hat?
The Phantom.
No,
No, he's got
doesn't even have a hat.
He's like all cloaked up.
Yeah, you
Well,
believe that?
if he doesn't have a hood, then I mean a hat, then he probably wouldn't be able to win.
Yeah.
Stand a chance.
And instead of just killing this guy, the Demon King says, "Oh, look, I'll do you one better. I will make this cycle continue every 500 years, and you're going to be the one to keep it going. I'm going to shatter your sanity and trap you in this music box, and you're just going to have to keep playing and keep the cycle going for 500 years." This phantom, who now plays an organ inside a music box, very
Is he in an opera?
Phantom of the Opera
Yeah,
style.
he's got an organ. Yeah.
Fuck. Does he have a mask?
He does.
Yeah.
He's literally the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, that's
Fucking come
that was
on.
a little that was a little bit.
It was on this.
Getting past that, his sanity is mostly shattered, but he keeps just enough sanity to create this scroll that has the power to traverse time, given to the one that wields it, and says, in order to defeat this and break this cycle, it's going to have to span multiple generations. I'm going to need a way to get chosen warriors to ally together, but it's going to take more than one lifetime. So he creates this scroll and creates the loop. And at some point, enough messengers amass, and you learn that all the messengers actually end up being all those Blue Road people. Those are all the other messengers, and the reason why they had to be robed in blue is because a lot of times you might meet like a later version of yourself, or people from a totally different time as you, and that could be startling or like make a person have a mental breakdown if they see someone from the future or from the past. And so they said, we're just all be Blue Robe people, but we're all messengers that have succeeded at some point. Well, in order to break this cycle, you have to not confront the Demon King, but go into the music box and save Phantom so that that cycle can be broken, then you can go save humanity. That's what your protagonist does. You're going to be the one chosen to find the music notes by backtracking into these worlds, re-interacting with their environments, and breaking the seal on the music box, save Phantom, break the cycle, then kick ass and save humanity, and all that good stuff. So that's the actual story of the Messenger. And ultimately, I liked it. I mean, there was a couple of cheesy points, but the ultimate narrative presentation was pretty damn good for me.
So here's my question. This is now maybe the third or fourth game this is at least the second game we've played with a time paradox story. It might be because Final Fantasy VIII definitely has a time paradox story.
Right.
Chrono Trigger has some of that.
Okay, there's definitely time play there.
We've played. Why does this keep coming up? Like, why is this the thing? Life is Strange.
Yeah, Life is Strange. Yeah, for sure.
Life is Strange.
Yep.
I know that like time travel narratives are semi-popular, are fairly popular, but they feel much more popular in gaming than they do in other forms of media. Or maybe I don't know if I'm wrong. I guess some of these are games across generations. So saying that, comparing Final Fantasy VIII that came out now like 20 years ago with these games, I don't think is necessarily fair. But
I can't think of anything besides, like, I've read a bunch of time travel books, but I've never read, like, how should I phrase this? Like, time travel narratives aren't really popular in, like, canon literature. You know what I mean? Like, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine is the only time travel story that really has, massive cultural resonance in terms of literature. So they're not popular there.
Now, Pete, you had mentioned in an earlier podcast that there were these, like, bad writing tropes.
Yeah.
And so when you have to create some kind of, like, motive or, like, villain or whatever, there's these, like, easy ones, and one of them's like, oh, like, they're crazy, or, like, it was all a dream, or, like, there's these,
mind
like, bad...
control.
Yeah,
amnesia.
Mind control. These, like, really bad storytelling tropes. Would you consider this kind of thing like a time travel loop? One of those, like, cheesy, campy, like, tropey narrative points, would this fall into that kind of category?
Yeah, I mean, time travel's pretty played out at this point. I think too, like the time travel as torture device is even more played out subset of time travel. Like whenever demons want to punish people, it always seems like, ooh, time travel loop's the way to go.
Groundhog Day
Right.
is what you deserve.
Or even like if you look at Doctor Strange, like how did he win? Oh well, he trapped the villain in this time loop, and the villain would give up anything to escape it.
Yeah. It might just be some of the games we've picked, but it feels like gaming delves into this sort of shtick more than other types of media. And at this point, after having played, just for this podcast,
Right.
4 versions of this story that I can think of on the spot, it's getting to be pretty played out.
You know what I think it might be? I think it might be because backtracking is inherently more acceptable in gaming as opposed to like books or movies. So like if you're going to have a time travel loop, you pretty much need backtracking. Otherwise, it's not a loop.
Yeah, but some of this, so I think in Chrono Trigger, backtracking, like the time travel facilitates backtracking. In Life is Strange, it lets them reuse some scenes. In this game, it lets them reuse some scenes. But like Final Fantasy VIII's time travel loop doesn't really, it does let them reuse a little bit of stuff, but not that much. It's just odd to me. Like some of these games go out of their way to add weird time travel paradoxes that are not necessary. Hardly at all.
Yeah.
So I have an idea here, and like there's a lot of ways you can introduce elements of fantasy and elements of the supernatural. It's a rare game that will try to like appropriately incorporate quantum theory into its casual gameplay, but time travel is still a metaphysical concept that doesn't have a lot of stuff figured out about it. Kind of like, back in the day, flying cars were a concept of science fiction thought to be an impossibility that only the future would unlock. Well, now flying cars are like not that interesting in media today because no one cares. In theory, we could have probably figured out something along the lines of a flying car.
We realized it was impractical.
Yeah, it was just impractical, and said like we're not going to do this because nobody would really want this. Time travel is still in that kind of like, it's definitely unexplored enough that it still has that sort of like fantasy aspect, but people can digest it enough because it's a concept that's well known, at least.
Am I wrong to just say, hey, maybe this is just Back to the Future's fault, and this game is kind of 80s themed?
So let me expand a little bit more here. If you want to add something supernatural to a game, there's only so many ways you can look. You can look towards the divine and try to have some kind of like higher power influence.
I mean, there are demons in this game, so yep.
Well, yeah, but I don't think the demons are like really what. Yeah, like there's demons as like the bad guy, but it could have just as well been undead or anything else as the bad guy. So I think the fact that it was demons wasn't necessarily the thing. This is a time travel game, not necessarily a demons game.
No, but I'm saying this game did not like pick one.
Yeah,
they
true,
said,
true.
what if we took the whole? We went to the China buffet. And
we got all the things.
We got all the things. We got sushi there. We got some ice cream.
Got the garlic bread.
We got garlic bread.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that's at the China buffet, but sure.
There was a taco. It looked like a taco.
I love China buffet, man.
Authentic, it said.
Well, so you can look towards the divine. You can look towards the arcane. A la Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, any of those more high fantasy things. You can look towards science fiction, and if you're going to add some kind of fantasy, it's probably going to be in one of these areas. So I don't really fault the game for using time travel, because if you're going to add a fantasy aspect, it's probably going to be one of these other super played out things too. Like basically every fucking video game of all time that has any kind of magic has like the rock paper scissors element of like fire, ice, wind, lightning, or like ground or light. That's in every video game that's ever had a magic caster. We don't really fault that game, but this game decides to use time as part of its narrative build, so I don't think it's that bad.
I don't think it's not this game. It's just this larger trend that seems odd to me that we would recur on this. Like the elemental systems are for gameplay ease of use. Like there are only so many mechanics. There are only so many things that naturally make sense as a rock, paper, scissors for human beings because we understand intrinsically how these elements play out, or there are larger kind of lores around these different elements that you might understand, like wind beats rock, rock beats lightning. These are things that as you're just in the world, you understand the properties of these different objects, these different types of energy. And so they just kind of get to piggyback on this knowledge that you already have. The thing with time travel that's odd to me is not that it's played out, it's that it's this story element that's always added. You have to do so many narrative twists and conceits to make it happen. So things like elemental designs are actually a path of least resistance. They help teach things about your mechanics without you having to go out of your way to explain the mechanics. Like if you said, okay, there are 4 types of magics, nails, piñatas, hot dogs, and thumbtacks. And, thumbtacks beat hot dogs, but hot dogs beat nails. Like, you could make it work, like it would behave just like, fire beats ice, ice beats, something else, but it would make no sense. You'd have to spend all this time explaining it. You could come up with your own words for what they are, but it's a shortcut. It makes it so that it's understandable for a person. Time travel, you need to do all sorts of weird garbage to make your story make sense. And I feel like if you're going to grab something off the spice rack that requires you to really know what the hell you're doing with it, or else it comes out bad, know what you're doing. Have a good reason.
I would say among the spice rack of video game design, time travel is probably one of the ones that you need to really know what you're doing, because adding just a little bit too much or a little bit not enough is going to just ruin the whole dish.
Yes, if you grab the cayenne pepper of time travel off of your spice rack, you might look at it and go, oh, it's pepper. It's just, it's a pepper. But no, this is different than the other peppers you're fucking with. If you add too much of this, it's going to be bad.
Vanilla's like that too.
Vanilla is like
real
that.
ass vanilla extract.
Yeah, vanilla extract, it confuses you. You think, oh, I like vanilla. I want more vanilla. No. There's too much. There's such a thing.
10% too much of that small amount of vanilla will just ruin that whole dish.
Exactly, and I think time travel is the vanilla extract. Except, I think it's more the cayenne pepper because everyone thinks that vanilla, you need it for a bunch of things and you want to use it, so you got to know how to use vanilla. Cayenne pepper's like, you've got it. It's always available to you,
most
but
kitchens
you probably
have that.
should use it.
Because when you move out of your parents' house and they give you just a bunch of random shit from their cabinet, you're gonna get some cayenne pepper, and you might have it in your cabinet and not know how to use it.
One time, me and my wife were making tacos, and it called for chili pepper, and I bought cayenne pepper because I thought that this was a chili.
Have a bad time.
It was a type of chili pepper. Those are not the same. Listeners, cayenne peppers are a type of chili pepper, but they are not chili pepper.
Public service announcement from the boys
Don't
of Deep
be like me. Don't be a goober like I was. Follow-up question. What's the weirdest, most anachronistic thing you've seen at a China buffet?
I love Chinese buffets, by the way. I will always stand for the China buffet.
Probably like Alfredo pasta.
Ugh.
That's a pretty good one.
or like an actual like Mexican style taco.
Yeah, I've definitely seen tacos.
You've seen a taco? I thought sushi just because like you need to know just a little bit to know that not a lot, but you need to know that sushi is a Japanese thing and not a Chinese thing.
Right.
And so I felt like they were just trying to put one over on people who did not know. But then I realized that Chinese buffets tend to not give a shit. You spent $10.
I was at a Thai restaurant with somebody one time, and we finished our food, and like the check came, and they're like, "Why are there no fortune cookies?" I was like, well, like I'd have to do like, okay, so it's like an American version of a Japanese recipe that then became associated with Chinese restaurants, and never mind that Thailand's an entirely separate country, an entirely different part of the world. So I was just like, yeah, I don't know.
Guess they forgot it.
Like, yeah, we can ask.
I just remember one time when I was at baseball spring training, we had someone who we were at China buffet. We would eat at like a series of establishments over the course of spring training, and the apex were the China buffet and the Golden Corral because they had other types of food. They had anything other than like chicken wings and fries. And so someone said, I'll eat anything at this China buffet. And that was a mistake for them to say to a bunch of teenage boys.
Yeah.
They said, I can eat anything and I won't puke. They made a mistake. They were
now
wrong.
it's just become a challenge.
Yeah, someone made a slurry of ice cream and they put like, weird meats and things in there. And that didn't get him. That didn't actually get him. What ended up getting him was they took a glob of wasabi about the size of a thumb and hid that in there.
Gross.
So he was eating it. He's like, oh, did someone put salt in this? And then he takes another spoonful and he looks down at the plate with his mouth closed. He looks up and he just goes, did you guys put wasabi in this? And someone's just like, yep. He's like, you assholes. And then runs to the toilet immediately.
Got him.
So that's the messenger.
Yeah. I mean, you actually just really eloquently talked about what the messenger is. It's really this like cacophony of like sweet things and like kind of savory things, and this glob of wasabi named Corbel.
Piece of shit, horrible.
Really perfect analogy, like hats off to you, man.
I'm glad you saw the thread that I was weaving there. I was afraid that it was too subtle.
It was incredible.
Well, thank you, Billy, for picking
the
messenger
herself.
I mean, ultimately, I really enjoy this game. I mean, I am
enjoyed
a fan
it.
of time
I enjoyed
travel.
Bits of it. I don't know. I just got frustrated in spots, and that stopped me from progressing. But I think if I had played it a little bit more, I probably would like it a little more.
So, I want to give some props to the devs here. This is a game that was published by Devolver Digital. It was developed by Sabotage Studios.
It's a good name.
Music in this game is great, I'll say.
Yep.
Fantastic soundtrack. Even better name for the composer. The composer's name is Eric, a.k.a. Rainbow Dragon Eyes Brown.
Wow.
Okay.
DJ Rainbow Dragon Eyes in the mix.
I will echo the point, Gino, that I think this game was probably bit off a little too much than it needed to actually chew for stuff like the art style and the homage to like old school games, and then like trying to like simultaneously make it a new looking game, and like that probably was unnecessary as far as what kind of benefit it added to the game. But I liked the tight controls, I liked the music, I liked the time travel stuff because I'm a sucker for it, and I think as far as time travel stories are concerned, they actually did this one kind of responsibly, because as a person who has studied closed causal loops in an academic setting, the time where the loop breaks is usually due to someone's realization of another option. And I think they handled that well And even though just inherently closed causal loop stories have problems that are like ultimately like impossible to resolve, just because metaphysically they don't work out. They're generally like inconsistent in some way. This story does an okay job of representing itself as a time travel story. So while you might criticize it for being time travel in that that's the most precarious spice on the video game spice rack, you can
I
still
would say
look at it.
amnesia and mind control are more used, and I find them more distasteful than time travel. Time travel usually is at least goofy fun, and at least
Right.
this uses it for goofy fun instead of evil.
Right. When you have an antagonist and the only reason why they are the villain is because they have a mental illness, that's not cool.
Nope.
We've all kind of gotten behind that before and said, hey, you know what? We want more creative motives for our bad guys. This is just some wholesome time travel shenanigans. And when done correctly, I can always go for a nice serving of time travel story. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
So, Pete, it is your turn to pick the next game we play.
Yeah, I am up. And I don't think we've played this game yet. But
Excellent.
if we do, please correct me. And I have backups in mind. But this is a game that just recently had its 10-year anniversary. So it's relatively timely in that vague sense. And it also fits in with Halloween upcoming. So I thought we'd play a spooky game. That might have,
Spooky.
a little spooky game that might have a lot worth talking about. And I think it's one I imagine we've all played, or at the very least are all familiar with, if nothing else. So for our Halloween 2018 spooky game, I'd like us all to play Dead Space.
Ooh, we have not played Dead Space. I have played Dead Space, though. I haven't played it in a while.
Yeah. Its 10-year anniversary was, I want to say, the 18th, maybe the 20th of October, but very recent. And I think there's going to actually be a fair amount to say about the story, the plot, and the setting. I think there's some interesting stuff going on here.
It's so bad because when you said this game's 10 years old and it's a game we probably all have played and it's, remarkable. I'm like, oh, like Silent Hill 2 or like Silent Hill 1. And then you're like, it's 10 years old, Dead Space.
Yep.
I was like, oh no. I remember
We're old.
I bought this game when it was new and it still looks good.
Yep.
Fuck.
I have never played Dead Space,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I'll be looking forward to a new experience.
That's your chance. I've never finished it.
Cut off the limbs.
Nice.
Just remember, you're gonna want to aim center mass, but don't.
Don't. That's what makes it so spooky.
You want to go for the limbs, or like the legs, or the head? What do you want to go for?
You want to
Legs, arms.
Legs
Depends
and
on the
arms.
creature.
Yeah. I just love at the beginning of the game, one of the very first rooms, you get your gun, your first gun, and then in true horror game fashion, scrawled on the wall in blood is like cut off the limbs.
Yeah, I remember that.
Why do you want to go for the arms?
You'll learn.
Yeah, it's a question of combat efficacy.
You'll learn.
Your opponent.
Okay, I guess because when you were playing Resident Evil 4, you wanted to kneecap the bad guys, and
It's
so
like that.
It was more like you could conserve ammo and do better stuff if you just disabled the bad guys and then dealt with them in a different way.
Yeah, it's not really ammo conservation in this case, but it's similar.
You'll see.
Yeah,
you'll learn.
Okay.
It'll be quick.
Okay.
You'll all learn.
Oh no.
All right. So thank you, Billy. Thank you, Pete.
Always a pleasure. Make sure you turn off your fans tonight, everybody. Be safe out there.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I had a great time playing The Messenger. Definitely would suggest picking it up, especially if you like a new game that was made in an old style.
And remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And just in case you got this far, we're on Spotify now, too. So if that's more convenient for you, use that to download.
Download them all.
Yeah, just keep downloading it. Inflate our numbers. All right. Thanks. Till next time. Peace.